I want you to get up out of your country. I want you to get away from your family. And I want you to go to a place that I'm going to show you. And Abraham moves in faith. Abraham leaves everything that he knows. He leaves his family. He leaves all of that stuff. Him and his wife and his nephew, they leave their home and they go to a place. They don't even know where they're going yet. But God does amazing things through Abraham's life. And he takes Abraham and his wife Sarai, even though they're in their 90s, and he does miraculous things and they have a child. He's the God of Isaac. Isaac is that promised child. So where even though they're in their 90s, and it's extremely difficult to have a kid nowadays, past 40, God does the miraculous and allows them to have a promised child in their 90s to fulfill a promise. And then Isaac, he continues on the work from his father Abraham. Isaac starts his family, and he has a couple of kids. Y'all remember Jacob? Esau? The tricks. You got it. Jacob continues the work that his grandfather Abraham has started and that his father Isaac has started. And Jacob has a gang of kids. And from Jacob's generation to all of his kids' generation, they are now down in Egypt, and all of them have died off, and they have all gone to be with their fathers. And now we are seeing this next generation coming to the forefront. And Moses is the one that God is calling out of all of them to say, you are next. I don't know if you guys realize it or not, but even right now, in the 21st century, we are in the middle of a shift. We are in the middle of a passing of the baton. There are old preachers like Miles Monroe. You may know him, you may not. But he was a giant in the church, a giant in the kingdom. Great preacher, great teacher, great man of God. He passed away a few months ago. He's gone home to be with the Lord. Someone has to step in and take his place. There are other preachers, great men like Bishop G. Patterson, Memphis, Tennessee. You may know him, you may not. But an awesome preacher, awesome leader, awesome pastor, awesome man of God, was responsible for a lot of people coming to Christ and giving their life to him. But he's gone on to live with the Lord. And even in this house, Bishop is good. Bishop is healthy. And in the immediate future, we don't see him going anywhere. But you gotta think about it. Why is he investing so much money, so much time, so many resources into developing that building over there? It's so that you guys, the next generation, can get prepared, and so that you can get into the rhythm of running, so that when he does finish his portion of the race and he yells stick, all of us in unison will reach our hand back and catch the baton, so that the work of the kingdom can continue on in your generation. It would be a shame if our forefathers, if these great men and women of God who have done all of this work in the church, all of this work in the kingdom, did all of this work, did all of these things, gave their life, years, talent, passion, prayers, all of these things, and the next generation doesn't pick up and continue the work. It will be a shame. We're in the middle of a shift. And we're seeing guys like Chris Dorso. He's been at Fire Code a couple of times. We're seeing guys like Drew Castillo, your youth pastor, who is being raised up and brought to the forefront. We're seeing other people like Robert Madu, who's going to be preaching at Fire Code this year. You're seeing all of these names of guys who have been in the background, men and women who have been in the background, and they are now being brought to the forefront because it's time for them to get into the rhythm of running so that they can catch the baton and continue on the work of this generation and the work of the kingdom. Now, here's the thing. When God is calling people, there are some examples in Scripture of people where God encounters them and they just accept it. They didn't ask any questions. They didn't make any protests. They just heard the voice of the Lord and they started to act. We know about a couple of them. We know when God comes to Noah and he tells Noah to build the ark because I'm about to flood the earth, Noah specifically started working. Noah didn't ask any questions. Noah didn't say, who am I? Noah just got to work. We know Abraham, for example, when God comes to Abraham and he says, I want you to get up out of your country. I want you to get away from your family, and I want you to go to a place that I will show you. Abraham doesn't sit back and say, well, where exactly are you taking me? You didn't tell me. He just gets up and he moves. He says, come on, sir. Lot, you coming? All right, cool. Where we going? I don't know. I just know I heard the Lord speak, right? There are some people, when God encounters them, they just don't ask any questions. They just get up and they go. But the truth be told, there are a whole lot more people that were kind of like me when God called me. I was 17 years old. And I'll never forget it. I was sitting on the drum set and we were in revival and they were preaching about purpose. And the preacher said, we're not going to do any singing, any shouting, any running, any of that stuff. Step away from the keyboard, step away from the organ, close the doors. For the next 10 minutes, we're just gonna sit silent and we're gonna hear from God. Now, I'll never forget it, sitting on that drum set, 17 years old, wanting to play football, wanting to play basketball, couldn't really do it. Trying to figure out what's gonna be the next step in my life. And I'll never forget, God showed me a vision of me preaching and teaching and being a pastor. And Moses has a very similar reaction to the one that I had about 13 years ago. Because I just kept wondering to myself, are you sure? Like, DeMarcus, Anthony Wiggins, like, are you sure? Like, you know me, right? You know I'm a little crazy, right? Are you sure that you want me to be a preacher? Because here's the thing. The calling of God is an extremely serious calling. And I don't know what it is about some people nowadays who want to rush towards the pulpit as if it's some glorious thing, as if it's America's Got Talent, or if it's something that's just going to give you $1 million and all of this fame and all this other stuff. It's hard work. It can be stressful. It can be a lot on you. And so it's not something that I have been walking around in my life just saying, I aspire to do that. No, I'm okay. So when he shows me this, I understood the weight of it. I understood the seriousness of it. It's not a small task. Because if you really think about it, to be called by God, to be used by God, is to be sent to people, some that you know, some that you don't know, but it's to be sent to people and essentially try and play a part that is going to change the destiny of their life. Here's the thing, because we all know that our experience is not just here on planet Earth. When we check out of here, we're going somewhere else. You're either going up or you're going down. And when God calls you, when God taps you and says, hey, I want to use you as a part of my plan, you've got to understand the weight of it, the seriousness of it. He's saying, I want to use you to be able to change the direction and the trajectory of someone else's life, not just here on earth, but forever. It's a huge thing. And so when God comes to Moses, I'll get your question. When God comes to Moses and he says, I want you to go down to Egypt and I want you to tell Pharaoh to let my people go, I understand Moses' reaction. Because the truth be told, Moses has some issues, just like I had some issues. And I'm almost willing to bet if God stopped the service right now tonight and began to speak to you directly and to say, Sam, I want you to go and do X, Y, Z. I want you to go over to Egypt and I want you to prophesy to people. whatever it is that he would say, I'm pretty sure that there are some concerns that will come up as to where we would have some objections and some protests. And probably ask the same question, who am I? One of the things that Moses has to deal with is that he doesn't really have the position to go and deal with Pharaoh. What I'm talking about is simply this. In order to go and to visit Pharaoh, you have to be summoned in to his presence. Remember I asked you guys last week, how many of y'all think that y'all could just walk up into the White House, like no security, no checkpoints, and you just walk right up into the Oval Office talking about, what up, Dr. Rock? What's good? Hey, I want to holler at you about a few things, right? Not going to be that easy. You got to understand that even though this is thousands of years ago, there is still protocol. There is still a lot of security that is going on around Pharaoh. And so to just be able to walk in to Pharaoh's courts and say, hey, the people that are making your country prosper, the people that are building up your cities, their God told me to tell you to let them go. Okay. First of all, it's a crazy message. But then it's also the fact that you're a shepherd, Moses. Like, it's one thing if you're a king of another country and you're going in it. It's another thing if you hold a position within the Egyptian government and you're going in to try and talk to Pharaoh about letting these people go. But for all Pharaoh knows, you were just some raggedy, run-of-the-mill shepherd from Midian who has come into my presence, and you're trying to tell me what some God that I don't know said that he wants my citizens, my slaves to do? You have lost your entire mind. Moses doesn't have the position to be able to go into Pharaoh's court. And then another issue is that Moses has a dirty past. How many of y'all remember Moses killed a dude 40 years ago? Okay. If you put it into today's terms, Moses is a fugitive. He's an enemy of the state. Y'all ever see them FBI wanted posters? Yes. And they got them people's picture up talking about wanted, reward for $10,000, $50,000, $100,000. Okay? If Moses was living in the 21st century, his picture would be up. Airports, post office, all of these different places saying Moses wanted for murder. Moses has a dirty past. So it's one thing, he doesn't have the position, he doesn't have the influence or the right to just walk up into Pharaoh's court. Another issue is that he's got a shaky past. And so I can't just go up in there and say to Pharaoh, let my people go. It's going to be an issue. Another issue that rises up is that Moses doesn't have the potential. A few verses down from here, Moses is still talking with God about the situation, like, hey man, are you sure? Do you really want me to go? And he tells God, he's like, I can't go because speech problem. I can't go in there because I don't have the potential to be able to do this assignment. And I never forget, sitting on that drum set, God showing me that I would be a preacher. And I thought about my position. Like, first of all, God, I'm 17. And I'm pretty sure that if I'm going to be preaching, then I'll be preaching to some adults. And sometimes as adults, we can kind of get a little big-headed, especially if a young person comes up and starts trying to tell us, thus said the Lord. We sit there looking at you like, oh, that was so cute. You wet behind the ears. That was nice. That happened to me a couple of times. Going and preaching somewhere, and I'll never forget it. This woman came up to me and said, that was a nice speech. I was like, are you serious? I don't give speeches, I preach, right? I don't have the position. It'd be one thing if I walked up in here with a doctor in front of my name, reverend, pastor, bishop, all of this other stuff that seemingly holds weight in the church. but I don't have the position. I'm 17. I'm a kid. And then I got a little shaky past. Yeah, I'm only 17, but I've made some kind of questionable decisions in my life. And especially if I go into my school and try to tell them, hey, yo, man, Jesus really wants a relationship with you. You? Yeah, man. I'm the one telling you this. Bruh, DeMarcus, for real. Like last year, multiple girls. Now you up in here evangelizing, talking about Christ. Had a little shaky past. There are some of you guys in this room probably have the same situation. And it's not even that you have done some things. It could have been some things that have happened to you to make you feel like you're disqualified to be able to do it. Could be some things that have happened to you to make you feel like you're low, you're not important enough, you're not equipped, or you're dirty, or you're defiled. And so your past becomes an issue. And then I also had a concern about my potential. Another thing, I grew up in a traditional Baptist church. Y'all ever been to them churches where at the end of the sermon, the preacher starts revving it up and the organ starts going crazy? And God, we okay, I can't do all of this stuff. And then there are some other churches where it seems like every time a preacher would get up, they would start singing and the whole church house would just go crazy. And I'm one of them. All of that. Jesus, I can't sing, number one. And number two, I can't hoop. I can't do all of that stuff. And so there's a question of my potential. And all of these issues are brought to the forefront when God is encountering Moses and he asks the question, who am I? That I should go to Pharaoh and that I should lead the Israelites out of Egypt. It's a huge task. It's bigger than me. It's beyond me. It's not something that I think that I'm capable of doing. And one of the cool things that I love about this is that God tells him in verse 12, I understand that you have concerns about your position. I understand that you have a concern about your past. I understand that you have a concern about your potential and your ability to be able to do what I'm calling you to do. All valid concerns. But in spite of all of that, I still want you to go. And I'm going to be with you. So even though Moses' position is an issue, even though his past is an issue, even though his potential is an issue, all three of those P's are made null and void when you have God's presence. And I thought to myself, Moses is asking you, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and that I should lead the people out of Egypt? And you tell him, I will be with you. It seems like you're answering the question that he didn't ask. I didn't ask God if you go with me. I asked you, who am I that I should go on this assignment? And the answer didn't change. He says, I will be with you. And one of the things that I realized is that although Moses has all of these natural concerns, they are made null and void when you bring a supernatural God into the equation. Here's what I mean. Even if you don't have the position, even if you don't have the potential, and even if you have a shaky past, with God's presence in your life, it will always take your natural abilities, max with his super abilities, and make a supernatural purpose. When God tells Moses in verse 12, he says, I still want you to go, and I will be with you. And here is a sign that you will know that I sent you, is that when you lead them out of Egypt, you're going to bring them back to this very mountain to worship them. And I wondered to myself, God, why is that a sign? I would think if I'm walking down the street and a bush catches on fire and it doesn't turn into ashes and a voice starts talking out of the bush, I would think that that would be a good enough sign. But sometimes, as humans, if we're completely honest with ourselves, we can have the most crazy, supernatural experience. We can have one of those experiences like you guys had a few weeks ago where we worshiped for like an hour and a half, and you can walk out of the church crying in tears, feeling like I never want to leave the presence of God, feeling like I heard him speak, feeling like I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. You can have one of those crazy experiences, one of those burning bushes encounters, and still walk away and question if God really spoke to you. I can't tell you the number of times people have walked up to me. Some of you guys do it. And it confounds the world out of me when you do it. Because I'm a volunteer. This badge, this is a volunteer badge. But some of you guys come up to me and say, "What's up, Pastor D?" And I'm like, "Hey, Drew is your pastor. I'm just a volunteer," right? All of these confirmations. A vivid vision sitting on that drum set 13 years ago. God showing me what I'm going to do in your life. Confirmation after confirmation after confirmation. Burning bush experience after burning bush experience after burning bush experience. I would think that that would be enough. But sometimes that's still not enough. And God says to him, the sign, the token for you, Moses, for you to know that I'm really calling you to do this, the token for you to know that you were really built for this, you were really equipped for this, here's the sign. You are going to do on this assignment, on this level, what you have already done before in your life. I said, God, make that make sense. Back at the beginning of chapter 3, it says, and Moses led the sheep of his father-in-law Jethro to the backside of the desert to the mountain of God. And I said, okay, what are you saying? To tweak it and get you to do it on the next level. And all of a sudden it made sense. All throughout middle school, at the lunch table, sitting back, eating my cinnamon roll, drinking my black cherry sparkling water. That's all I had for lunch. Praise God that I'm still here and didn't eat healthy at all. Anyway, all of those times at lunch, sitting back, freestyling, holding those battles at the table, I was essentially doing what I'm doing right now, just in a different level. I was using my mouthpiece, words, verbal ability, in order to be able to sway the crowd, in order to be able to inform the crowd, in order to be able to move the crowd. I did it on that level. And God was showing me on that drum set 13 years ago, the things that you've done on that level with your mouth, I'm calling you to do the same things on a different level for me. I thought about it again. All of this pastor stuff. All throughout my life. Because it's nothing that I ever aspired to. Again, this is a very, I say this as if I'm doing it now. But to be a pastor, to be the man on whatever level is not an easy task. You guys come with a lot of responsibility because you've got to understand that, again, you are the apple of his eye. He knows the number of hairs that are on your head. Your walls are etched on the palm of his hand. And he is essentially saying, I am commissioning you to take care of them. That's a huge responsibility. Because when you guys are up and when you're down, the pastor is commissioned to watch over you and take care of for you in the very position of Jesus almost. It's a huge responsibility. It's a huge assignment. But enough about being a pastor. Think about the things that he might be calling you to do. And just think about it. Don't blurt it out. Really think about your life so far, up to this point. What are some of the reoccurring experiences that keep happening to you? Just think about it. Moses protests. He says, if you send me, they won't believe that you sent me. And God said, what's that in your hand? Moses was holding his staff. That's what he used to lead the sheep. And God said, take your staff, throw it on the ground. The staff turned into a snake. And God said, now pick it up. He picked it up and it turned back into his staff. What he was showing Moses in that situation is, since you're concerned about not having potential, you think that you aren't built for this, you think that you don't have what it takes in order to do what I'm calling for you to do, take what you have, and I want you to see how I can use what you have to complete my mission. So think about it. What do you have? Some of you guys, I'm not making any direct assumptions or accusations, but some of you guys might have a smart mouth. And crazy as it may seem, God can take your smart mouth, he can take your staff, he can take your rod, and he can use that for him. He can take you and make you an evangelist, arguing the case for Christ. What's something else that you have? Some of you guys might be concerned about the outcast, the people that seemingly never get any love, the people that aren't in the popular crowd, the people who can't sit at the cool kids table, if you will. Like, you might really be concerned about them. And God can take that concern. God can take that rod, that staff in your hand and say, let me show you how I can use that concern, that care for people who don't know me. The sign is that I'm going to take what you already do, Moses. You're already leading sheep. You're already leading the sheep of a father to you. All I'm going to do is take the experiences that you already have and flip them and use them in this dimension for me. And this is why it's a sign. And this is why it's a token. I never knew why people would always come up and say, yo, I just need some advice. I never had any counseling classes. But for some reason, these are reoccurring experiences to me. And I don't take it lightly, because he's helped me to understand all of the experiences that you have had before. I'm just going to use them at a different level for my purposes. I want you guys to really thank me, because I talked about how there is a passing of the baton. There's a transition from the generation of our fathers to us. And you guys are not exempt. Because the truth of the matter is, I can't go and be a witness in your classroom. I'm not a student. But you can. I can't be on your sports team. I can't come and work at your job. I got a job on my own. But there are people that are tied to you. Here's the thing that Moses had to understand, is that if Moses didn't go, they didn't get delivered. Here's a heavy statement. There are certain people to where their deliverance is tied to your obedience. And that's heavy. That's heavy. But you've got to switch your perspective and understand that, yeah, your position might be a concern. Your past might be a concern. Your potential might be a concern. But when his presence is brought into the equation, it makes a supernatural combination. And as long as he is with you, that thing that he's calling for you to do, you will be extremely effective at it. He says in Matthew that those who will lose their lives trying to find it, those who will give up their lives, man, those who will give up their lives trying to save it will lose it. And those who give up their lives for my sake, they'll find it. Essentially what he's saying is that there is a higher life that I designed and created for you. And sometimes we get caught up trying to hold on to this life down here. And he's saying, I have a life that I originally created and designed for you. And if you will allow me, Moses, Firehouse, to bring this super life to your natural experience, you will find the life that you were really supposed to live. You will find the life that you were meant to live. Here's the thing I want you to think on. What are the reoccurring experiences that keep happening to you? Who's coming to you? Who's asking you for advice? Who's asking you to pray for them? Who keeps coming to you to be a friend? What names do people keep calling you? They're calling you doctor, pastor, preacher, teacher. All of these things that you think are crazy and are above you. Think about your experiences. And then think about the things that you have. What do you have? Don't think about what you don't have. God is not going to require you to use what you don't have, but he will enable you to use what you do have. These are the things that I want you to think about. Let's pray.